Now, if you would please, if everybody could look up here for a minute, because this is something we have not talked about yet. So far, the only thing we talked about was the button, and we talked about the image, and the label, and the text box. All right? But I want to close this standard text box, and I want to open up the one that says validation. We will have a whole chapter on this. This is chapter 7. Chapter 7 is called How to Use the Validation Controls. But I want to show them to you so you see them right now. Okay? And if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 things here. 5 of them, the first 5 are what are called validators. The last one is a summary. So it'll, if you want, it'll create a box for you that tells you if you've got a bunch of errors, it'll tell you all of them. We're not going to worry about the validation summary now. We'll wait on that till chapter 8. We want 2 of these validators. One is we want the required field. We're going to say that this field and this field are required. Does that make sense? Because if you don't put a value in either one of those, how can it figure out your future value? If it doesn't know what the interest rate is, or it doesn't know what the number of years are, it can't do it. So we're going to make both those fields required. All right? And then the other one is, not only do we want them required, but we're going to use in here, when you look at these, this is a compare validator. All right? If you look up on the screen here, okay? This compare validator, why would you use this? Did you ever use a website where they ask you to put in your password and they ask you to put it in again? You'd use a compare validator for that so you could compare the two. Custom is if you want to create your own validation. We're going to use range. We're going to say, for example, that the interest rate maybe has to be between 1% and 25%. That kind of thing. All right? And we're going to say that the number of years has to be between 10 and 50 or something like that. All right? The required field I already mentioned, it just says that it's required. There's a regular expression. You can write your own regular expressions. Remember those things? Regular expressions. We worked on them before. But they also have built-in regular expressions for social security numbers, phone numbers, etc. We're going to hit all that stuff in chapter 8. So don't let it throw you. And I just mentioned already what the validation summary was. So what I want to do is, if you look up on the screen here, this is going to be very hard for you to see. In fact, maybe I can do this. I'm going to try to make it easier for you to see is what I'm saying. I'm going to go back up. You don't have to do this, but I want to go back up to my table, to the beginning of my table here, and it's got class equal, I don't care about that, but I'm going to say here, border equal 1. Are you telling me? Yeah, good. It's going to let me put in a border. Good. Okay. Is that easier to see now? That's why I put the border in there so you've got the lines. You can do that if that helps you to see. You don't have to do that. We can always remove that border equal 1 later. I put it right in the table tag. So if you look here, right at the beginning of the table, I put in there border equal 1. I don't want it to be a real big, huge, thick border, so I just made it 1 pixel. All right? Now, what I want to do is, please look up here. I'm going to take this line right here, I'm going to drag it way over. Because I want these to be big, but I want this one to be a lot smaller than it is. So how do I do that? Again, if you don't know, look up on the screen here. I take my mouse and I put it right here until I get the crosshairs, and then start dragging. Boom. That's what I want. Maybe I want it a little bigger than that. But there. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Now I'm going to put in these validators. So what's required? Well, the annual interest rate and the number of years. So I'm going to go where it says required validator, and I'm going to drag that one right here. And then guess what? I'm just going to grab another one right away, and I'm going to drag it here. So now I've got those. I'll worry about changing all the stuff in just a couple minutes. All right, so I've got those required validators. And then I also want to put a compare validator for each one of those. So I've got this And I've got, oh, I didn't grab the right one, so hold on. This. The good news, just so you know, that's the rest of our interface. That's it. We haven't even talked about code yet. I'm going to have to go in and change some of the attributes, so I'm going to have to go into source mode and change some stuff here. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Wrong one. Thank you. Make those range validators and not compare. Thank you. All right, so just highlight them, remove them, and change them to range. Thank you very much, Evan. All right, range and range. All right. I'll give everybody a minute to go and build the rest of that. Just so you're aware of it, if I try to run the program now, it is going to break. Because right now, believe me, the system this is not a smart package. It does not know that just because this required field validator is on this line, it doesn't know it goes with that text box. It doesn't know this goes with that text box. It doesn't know this goes with that text box, or this one goes with that text box. We have to tell it. We have to let it know that. All right, and I'm going to show you some stuff right now. So I'm going to go over the required field validator right here, and I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to go over to my properties window. Okay, and it says right here, well, what error message do you want to have? We'll figure that out in just a minute. All right, but notice right here it says control to validate. Everybody see this? Right over here. So I clicked on the required field validator and I went to control to validate. What control do I want? I want the text box annual interest rate. Now it knows the control that it's supposed to validate. I'm not done yet, but it's getting there. All right. The next thing is, right now if I get an error, all it's going to say here is required field validator. That's a stupid message. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but I'd say that's a stupid message. So I'm going to go down where it says error message, and I'm just going to type in here, annual interest rate is required, exclamation point. That's all I put in there. Annual interest rate is required. You can't read it. There it is. So those are the two things that I've set. The control to validate and the error message. There'll be more things that we'll worry about later. All right. Look in the box in the table. You see now my message is in there? Everybody see this? Put it in there for us. That's only going to show if we break the rules. We're going to see that in just a minute. All right. Now I'm going to go down to the next one, which is my number of years. And I'm going to do the same thing. Control to validate. I'm going to set that equal to text box number of years. And under the message, I'm going to have number of years is required. Now I've got both of those done. You use validation controls to test your input, and if your input doesn't meet certain criteria, you can give error messages. Okay? Now, as Evan so correctly told us, that range validator that's right there, okay, we want to have a certain range. So let's say that the interest rate must be between, let's say the minimum interest rate is going to be 1%. And the maximum interest rate, we'll make it 25. I'm just making those up. We can make up anything we want. So what I want to say in here, under my error message for my range validator, I want this to say annual interest rate must be 1 through 25. Okay? That's the first thing. There's more stuff that we're going to have to add, but I'll let you do that one first. All right. Bless you. Now, we've got to give it a range. So if you arrow down here, you see maximum value and minimum value. The maximum will be 25. The minimum will be 1. Everybody see that? Now I'm going to show you the thing that 99% of people get wrong. When we get done with all this, can you see, if you keep going down there, can you see where it says type? Everybody see that? All right. Problem with that is, that's the wrong type. It thinks whatever you put in is a string. So we're going to click where it says string there, we're going to click on that, click the down arrow, and choose double. Now we can put in any value, but if we put in a value less than 1 or greater than 25, that should fire. Does that all make sense? All right. Now we're going to do the same thing for our other range validator. We're going to go down, and this one, instead of making the type string, it's going to be an int or integer. The maximum value, let's say that the most years you can do this is 50, and let's say the least years you can do it is 10. All right, so I've set those. So I set maximum to 50, minimum to 10. Be real careful you don't reverse those because it doesn't make sense to the system. You couldn't have a maximum of 10 and a minimum of 50. That wouldn't make any sense. All right, so I made it an integer with a max of 50 and a minimum of 10. And I'm going to go to my error message, and I'm going to say number of years must be 10 through 50. Hit enter. And now I've got all that stuff in there. Yes.
Don't we also change the control value?
Yes, you're right. Thank you. But we'll do that in a minute. There's also something else we have to do. And that I forgot about, but I purposely left something else off. Okay? All right. As Tiffany so accurately just said, we should go to the annual interest rate here, to the first one, and let's go to control to validate, and we have to tell it what we want it to validate is our text box annual interest rate. Then go to the other one, and the control to validate should be the text box number of years. And you're right, and it's very good that you saw that. You think of something else we forgot to do? You say, no, Jeff, I don't. So I'm going to go over to source mode. This is going to be real big because it's written a whole boatload of stuff for us. There you go. Thank you. We didn't change the name. That I purposely left off to see if, and I'm glad you caught that. Because what I want to do is I'm going to go back into design mode, and I'll go over to the first one. I'll go over to my required. And it's called Required Field Validator 1, which is a stupid name. So I'm going to change it to Required Validator Annual Interest Rate. All right, so that will be the first name of the first Required Field Validator. Required Field Validator Annual Interest Rate. Then I'm going to go to the one below it. And I'm going to call that, no, not Required Validator 2, Required Validator Number of Years. All right. Then I'm going to go to my first range validator, and I'm going to call that Range Validator Annual Interest Rate. And the other one will be Range Validator Number of Years. goofed up somehow. Let's click on that again. Go. All right. Now, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go into my, so you can see what everything looks like right now. It actually looks pretty good. Okay? But I'm going to go back in here into my source mode, and I want to show you how bad it looks. All right? And what I mean by how bad it looks, well, where's my first required one? Okay, there. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. Okay, that looks pretty good. Still looks pretty good. Still looks pretty good. Oh, required field. Ooh, that looks pretty bad. Because look at all the stuff it put in. There's the name, the ID. There's the run at equals server. There's the control to validate. There's the error message. So I put that over several lines. Like I told you before, I do that because I think it makes it much easier to see what's going on. If you don't agree with that, leave it all in one line. But when stuff starts going to hell, it's much harder to figure out what was wrong. All right? So there's the first one. I'm just going to work my way down and do all of these. Here's the second one. Here's the range validator, first one. I don't know if there's a beautifier for it or not. You can look. There might be. If there is, it'd make it a lot easier than what I'm doing. So let me shrink my screen size here. But again, hopefully you can see it's looking pretty decent. You may or may not agree with that. All right, I'm going to save and I'm going to run it. Please look at the screen. It worked before, right? Before we did all this? I mean, we could put stuff in is what I'm saying. All right? Well, what's the matter? Would you agree that when we built this project, we started with an empty project? All right. Since we started with an empty project, what's supposed to happen is when we run this program, it's supposed to validate it on the client side using jQuery. It automatically provides some jQuery for us, except if you use an empty application, which is why I used an empty application. Purposely did it that way. All right? Now, to fix that, there are a bunch of different ways that you can fix it. Just so you know, there are a bunch of different ways that you can fix it. Okay? So, I'm going to show you 3 ways. Please don't type in any of these because the third way is the easy way. Did you hear that? That's the way we're going to do it. But I want to show you 3 ways that you can do it. All right? Don't do these first 2. So I'm just going to stop my run. All right? And stop the run here. So the first way that you can do it, we're not going to do it this. Oops. We're not going to do it this way, but the first way you can do it is I can come in here. If you look up on the screen, I'd like you to at least watch, okay? But I can come in here on the screen and I can go into my C# code. I can come in there. All right? And in my load event for C#, I can come in here and I can write unobtrusive validation mode, pretty ugly, but that's what it says. Unobtrusive validation mode equals unobtrusive validation mode dot none. I think it's got to be a big N. So I can do it like that. That's one way to do it. That's actually probably the easiest way because it's just a line of code. I mean, that's not bad. Okay? So he's, well, why don't you do it that way? Because that's not the way people do it. It is a way you can do it. All right? But it's not typically the way people do it. So I'm going to take that line of code and I'm going to comment it out. Okay? So I'm back to where I was before. So that's the first thing that you can do. Not doing that, but you can do it. The second way that I can is I can come back over to here. If you look up on the screen, all right, I can come back over to here. And now, oh, where is it? I've got this web.config that's here. All right, and I think I go into the debug one. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's that one. And I can come in here, all right, and I can check, do I have anything that says app settings? All right, app settings. I don't think I will. No. So I can go add one. Okay? So in other words, I can come down here and I can go into my configuration file that's down here. All right? And I can come in, I can put in, I can put in app settings. Okay? So I can put in this. So I'm putting in app settings. And I can manually come in here and say, okay, what I want you to do is add key, this is real long, so sorry, equals, and I put validation settings, colon, all right, so add key equals validation settings, colon, and then almost the same thing that we wrote before. So let me make this smaller, get rid of this. Make this smaller, Jeff. There we go. All right, I'll shrink this down so most of it shows on the screen. Okay, so there we go. So add key, validation settings, colon, unobtrusive, just like you saw before, unobtrusive, validation mode, all right, value equal none. That's basically doing the same thing, but it's doing it in the web config file. So I'm setting up the configuration for the website by putting in that line of code. Okay? Both those will work. Neither one of those is recommended. So after you get done, if you are, because a couple of you are writing this down, which is fine. Let me make it a little, I can make it a little bigger, I think. There. All right. One more. There. I'm going to comment that out as well. All right. This is an XML file, so I have to use HTML comments. Remember, that's a less than, hyphen, minus, minus. All right. I thought that's what, yeah, that's what I use. And then I have to put it at the bottom too. Minus, minus, greater than. Okay?
You actually deleted it.
I deleted it.
So what is that
The
called?
less than greater than
On the, like after app settings, the closing tag.
Right here.
Other one.
This, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can use either of those ways, but neither one of them is recommended. All right? And, you know, if you reach, well, why? Because neither one's recommended. I don't make the rules. Okay? So I want to show you the way most people do this right now. Okay? And it's actually, it may look hard, but after you've done it once, it's not hard at all. You can do this, what I'm about to show you, you can do it for a lot of different things. I'm going to go back to my ASPX file, and I'm going to go back into design mode. I don't have to, but I'm going to go back to there. All right? And once I go back to there, I'm going to right mouse click on my project. You've done this before. So I'm going to right mouse click on the project. All right. And after I right mouse click on the project, what we've always done in the past is we've chosen new. We don't want to choose that. We want to choose, and I'm looking for it because they changed it around from what they have in the book and where it is now. It's changed a little bit, so hold on. Here, manage Nuget packages, right there. So we right mouse clicked on the name of our project and we chose Nuget, manage Nuget packages. And I'm going to click. And it brings this up, which might seem as confusing as heck. All right? But we can tell the system to go out and find the library that we need for us and add it for us. This is what Nuget does. Nuget is called a package manager. What that means is, for lack of better words, you ever had this happen to you? I don't know how often people even go to libraries anymore, but I know that when I lived in Rockton, I wanted a book once. They didn't have it at the Rockton Library, but they had it at the Roscoe Library, which is the next town over. All right, so I checked it out. You know, I was able to check it. It was in stock, and basically they brought it to me. All right, so the libraries had a consortium where they were being managed. That's kind of what we're doing here. Not exactly the same thing, but kind of the same thing. All right, in the box that comes up here, we want to click on the word browse that you see in the upper left-hand corner. We want to click on the word browse. All right, then we have to tell it what we want it to browse for. So we go in the search box right here, all right, and we type in ASP.NET, all right, ASP.NET dot script manager. Notice mine at least found it dot jQuery. If I typed it correct, there it is. See the first one that came up? So I grab the one I want right here. I just click on it and it turns blue, and I click the button that says install. That adds everything. It tells me it's going to do that. And I click OK. That's going to add over here all these jQuery files for me. The advantage of doing it that way is that stuff got added. Doing it the other way, it doesn't manually add those like we just did. What's that? The question was, do you ever have to update it? It's saying here that I actually have not seen this before. And the only time you should have to is when you install it. I don't think it's smart enough that it goes out to the internet and checks every time you use it. All right. So I'm just clicking the update button. That's fine. I don't care.
So do we have to install it?
Okay. And now I'm just going to take this thing that's still open, and I don't really need it anymore, so I'm going to close it. It wouldn't matter if you did it or not. But now please watch. I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to run the program again. It's still not done. We don't have any code in there yet, right? All right. But hopefully I'm not going to get that error now. You saw the error that came up before. All right. There, I don't get the error. Well, that's a start. All right. But I'm going to try to click my calculate button. Notice annual interest rate is required. It's giving me that error. Number of years is required. It's giving me that error. Those are good things, right? Well, I'm going to put in here 1 million. And I'm going to put in here 1 million. You see how the other ones kicked in now? Now our validators work. That's good. What we got by using that Nuget and bringing that in, that's jQuery that it's using to do the validation. It's actually validating that stuff on the client, not on the server. And it's doing that because we did that Nuget. We brought in jQuery, for lack of better words. Okay. Anybody see anything about this? There's no error here. Can you think of a way we could look at this right now and make it maybe a little easier for people to figure out what's going wrong? Maybe I am asking a dumb question. Wouldn't it be nice if that was red and bold to show that it was an error? I think it would be. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're very quickly going to write our own CSS to do that. All right. Okay, yeah, and we are gonna go over that, but to answer your question, the short answer is, if I come back here, I'm gonna just stop my run, okay? But if I come back here and I go back into my source mode and I go up to the top, it already wrote some CSS for me. See that? If I don't want to use that, I can remove that. You know, if I don't like, what I did was every time I went and changed the size of the table, it wrote that CSS for me. Okay? I could manually go in and write CSS for me. All right? But I'm going to show you yet another thing that you could do. I think I'm going to answer your question this way. All right? And what we're going to do is this. If everybody would please look up on the screen here. We've done this before. We're going to, again, right mouse click on our project. We're going to choose Add. We're going to choose New Item. All right? What we want is Style Sheet, but hold on, don't do it yet. So we want to choose Style. You already did it, it's okay. But what don't we have? Well, I'm going to cancel out of this. Do we have a CSS folder in there? I don't see one. So let's add it. You know how to do this now. Right mouse click on the project name, choose Add, choose New Folder, and we'll call it CSS. All right. Then with that folder highlighted, right mouse click, choose Add, choose New Item, now choose Style Sheet. And stylesheet1.css is a crummy name. Most times people just call it style.css. Okay? So that's what I'm going to call mine, is style. All right? It gives you this by default. I don't want any of that junk. So I'm going to get rid of it. This is what I'm going to write. Okay? I'll write it too, but just so you see this. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to write in here, I'm going to make my own class. And I'm going to call it error to show that what I just did was an error. So since it's a class, remember dot, I'm going to call it error, curly, and I'm going to say color, red, which will make that text red, font weight, bold, which will bold it. So that's what I'm going to write. All right? Put it up there because it's a little easier for you to see. But I'm going to manually do it here. So, dot error, color, red. Notice how it even gives you a nice little color palette when you do that? So if I wanted it to be orange red or something, I don't have to type it. I can just choose the one I want on here. Okay? And font weight. It even shows you. These are the different levels of font weight that you can put in. Bold, bolder, etc. I just want bold is fine. Okay? All right. Now, I want to save this. Okay? And I'm going to close this now. But if you look up on the screen, I can come in here if I want to. I can come in here, and in my head section, after I got all these auto styles, do you remember how to do this? How we would go in there, we would type link. Remember all that? Rel equals style sheet. You know what? That's too much work. So right under that, I'm going to grab my CSS file. I'm going to take it and drag it right there and let go and let it write it for me. We're still not done. There's just one more step we have to do, and it's not hard. All right, like I said, there's one more step that we have to do. Please look up on the screen. We have to do it 4 times, once for each validator. So please look up on the screen. All right, so I'm going to go back into design mode, and you can do this either from the properties window if you want to, or you can do it in code. It doesn't matter. But I'll just do the first one from the properties window so you see this. Okay, I click right there. There's my required field validator, right? Well, if you look in here, do you see there's a field in my properties window that's called CSS class? If I click on that and I click the down arrow, lo and behold, on the bottom, there's error. See how it became bold and red? All right. And I can do the same thing for the other 4. So come over to here, CSS class, error, this one, CSS class, error, and then the last one. CSS class and error. Now, the only difference is if I save this and run it again, now my errors are going to be in red and bold. You know, I've said this before. I said this to the first year people yesterday, and they laughed. I don't think it's funny. Never underestimate the stupidity of the person running your application. You want to make it as simple for them, or as hard for them to screw up as possible. So I come in here and I'm putting in nothing. Calculate. There they are. They're red now, and they're bold. All right. Put in here. How about something non-numeric? See what I've got? All right. So now we're to the point where we can actually add our code, and we'll have this done. This is what I'm thinking. You tell me what you think of this, okay? Tomorrow, what I want you to do is literally, and I promise it'll take no more than, I'm going to keep my code, steal the code. I'm going to build this same interface for you, but I'm going to go and try to see if I can do it in about 15 minutes to a half an hour, okay? And if we don't have time to go over what the code means today, we'll do that tomorrow. The rest of the period, I want you to build this from scratch. Well, I don't know how to do that. It's chapter 2 in your book. They walk you through everything you have to do. Now, I wanted to do this, and I wanted people to struggle with it. Because if you did it on your own, and if you had 2 or 3 hours or whatever, and you were no distractions, or some of you like music or whatever, you probably could do it. All right, but I wanted you to run through it because these are the kind of problems that you've been having are the kind of problems you're going to have when you're doing this. All right. So we just looked at, with the jQuery validation, we just looked at 3 different ways that we could go in and put in the validation. Okay? All right. I'm going to stop this run again, and I want to show you one last thing about this if you look up on the screen here. Hopefully you realize this already. If I go back to my source mode, and I go back to those different validators that I put in, see how it added that for me? CSS class equal error. Everybody see that? I could type it in there too if I wanted to. It's smart enough. There's IntelliSense. If I type in CSS class equal, it'll bring up the IntelliSense for me. So if it's easier for you to do it like that, and sometimes people would rather do it like that. So if that's easier for you, then do it that way. It really and truly doesn't matter how you do it. You should do it in a way that seems the easiest for you to understand. All right? I don't know any other way to say it than that. Now, the stuff that I'm doing here by putting these things on different lines and whatever, I will tell you, the author of our book does not do that. All right, so this isn't going to look like the stuff in the book looks. But like I mentioned to you before, I do it like this because I think it's much easier to see stuff. Now you can tell everything that goes with everything else. All right? All right, time to write some code. Well, we've got this file. Remember this file right here? You've got to remember this. There are 2 files. This is our ASPX file. So when the user brings up our website, this is what she or he sees. Does that make sense? But we also have the file by the same name, .cs. So if you look up on your screen here, you've got 2 files. You've got the one here, which was webform1.aspx, and then you've got the webform1. I closed it, not opened it. .aspx.cs. Okay? Never, ever, ever monkey with the one that says designer. When you add controls, that's the code it's writing for you in the background. If you want your project to stop working, just go in there and start monkeying with that file. Because I guarantee you'll break it. How do I know that? Because I did it. I thought, well, wonder if I went in and did this. That was stupid. All right? Unless you really have this desire to sit and start all over again. So, I'm opening up that CS file, and this has got my C# code in it. And there's a few things that we're going to want to do here. Okay, so here's the file. Let me move this over. All right. The first thing that we want to do, you may or may not have even thought about this before, but the first thing that we want to do, what's in here? Get rid of that. When we run the program, this is not a trick question. What's in here when we run the program? Nothing. We want to fill that up. Okay? But we want to fill it up by using code. All right? And every time the person clicks that, they are at least possibly going to change the number that's in there. Would you agree with that? So we have to let the server know they've just changed their monthly investment. They went from $50 to $100. We have to let the server know that. All right? So we're going to come into the page load event that's right here. That's in our code. And that's when, this is what we put in there before, but remember I commented that out. So underneath that, I'm going to put in here, if not is post page, what is it? Postback or page post? Postback. Okay. If not is postback. And I'm getting the error because the I in is must be capitalized. All right. All right. I'm going to put the code in. There's only, I think, 2 lines. So then we'll go over it. Okay. For int I equal 50, I less than or equal to 500, I plus equal 50. Don't know what I just did there. DDL, not DDL, I'm sorry, drop-down list. Drop-down list, monthly investment, all right, equals items dot add dot toString, and that isn't right, items dot add I dot toString. Let me move this over so you can see it. I got to make it a little smaller so you're able to see it from where you're sitting. All right. So what did I do wrong here? That's not there. There's a mistake in here. Let me see if I can figure it out. Dot items equals items dot, oh, nice, Jeff. Dot items dot add. There we go. And if you say, okay, say person X here raises their hand and says, I have no idea what that does. I would say, you're wrong. You all know exactly what that does. That's going to take the drop-down list that currently, as Evan said, has nothing in it. It currently looks like this when you run the program, right? It looks like this. In fact, it's real small. It looks like this. Now it's going to have in there, in the drop-down list, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, and 500. That's what that code's doing. It's telling it to count from 50 to 500 by 50s. That's what this is doing. And it's saying for every number that you get in there, add it to the drop-down list. These are numbers. What goes in the drop-down list is text, so we have to convert it to string. All right. Let's see if that worked. So I'm going to do a save all. And I'm going to run this program again. Well, look, we got 50 in there now. There they are. All right. So now if I want, I can choose, there's 200. All right. The good news is, it's a good news, bad news. The good news is there's always going to be a number in there, so we don't have to do any validation. And it has to be 50. It's got to be one of these numbers. The bad news is, what if somebody wants to invest 10,000? Then you either have to change it, or you have to change it to a text box and let them manually add it, or have this go all the way down, or maybe do it by thousands. It's up to you. All right. If you're a bank, you might write a bunch of different apps, or you might let the user add what's the maximum, what's the minimum, and what do they want to increment it by. If it was from 100 to 10,000 by 50s, it's going to be a pretty doggone long list. But you could do that if you wanted to. All right, so we've got that done now. So the next thing that we have to do, and it really doesn't matter the order in which we do these, all right, but we've got, in fact, you tell me. Somebody tell me, look at this. Where else do we need code? Don't say you don't know. Look at the screen. Where else do we need code? What? No, that's what we will have code in that. We will have something in there, but what do we have to do to make that happen? We have to put code in our buttons. Doesn't matter really which one we do first. I'm going to double click on this button and it opens it up. All right, there's our calculate button. I'm going to double click on the other button and it's going to open that up. Okay, why don't we do our clear button first, because there's less stuff that we have to do. All right, there's four lines of code. That's the whole routine right there. So I'll give you a second to put that in. Check the time here. Yeah, we're getting up there. You've heard me say this before, but play computer. There's 4 lines of code in here. Please look up on the screen, please, everybody. What we're saying is, the first line is saying set whatever is in here back to 50, because that's what's in value 0. So we're always going to start it at 50. You don't have to do that, but that's the way we're doing it. The second line is saying blank out this text box. The third line is saying blank out this text box. And as Tiffany mentioned, the fourth line is saying blank out that label. So let's save it and run it again. I'm not going to check the validators. I've checked that before. So I'm not going to run that. But I am going to put in here, it's not going to give us future value yet because we didn't put in that code for the calculate. But I'm going to come in here, leave it at 50. I'll put the interest rate, I'll put in 10. And the number of years, I'll put in, 25. Okay? Click calculate. Well, nothing happens because we don't have any code there. Click clear. Well, that all got removed. Good. Let's change this from 50 to 450. Again, put in 250, And it must be between 1 and 25. Sorry. 10. Well, and now I know that works. All right, and 200. Calculate. Okay, number of years. Oh, that's wrong too. Good. So that works. Calculate. No. Clear. Set it back to 50 and it cleared out everything. Now we won't know for sure if it cleared out our future value until we calculate a future value. Do you want to take a very quick 5-minute break, or you want the code for this? Because the code for this, there probably are about 20 lines. Okay? At least one person said code. Okay, so we'll code. Have you ever heard, does everybody know what the word consensus means? You come to a consensus, do you know what that means? Do you know what the definition of consensus is? I'm going to say a word that's considered a swear word, but you know what it is? It's the act of pissing everybody off equally. That's what consensus is. That's why anybody who tells you, oh, it's marriage, that isn't true. As somebody who will be married next month, in like 6 weeks, 36 years, we have never had a consensus. A consensus is she's right and I'm wrong. That's our consensus. Really, and that's not a joke. All right? All right, so we've got the consensus hopefully will be after we do this, and after I quickly do the whole thing tomorrow from scratch in front of you, except the code. Then if I give you 3 hours, that you'll say, hey, you know, this is different, but I can see what Jeff's saying, that it's a combination of C# and HTML and a little CSS. And guess what? When we get into Chapter 3, it'll be some Bootstrap. All right? I know, some of you think Bootstrap's a 4-letter word. All right? You wouldn't believe how Evan has changed in St. Louis, how he's changed the beginning class. He gives them like 3 weeks of Bootstrap now. And I want to show you really quickly. You say, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm just going to show you this. You've never seen him anyway, so. Oops. I think that's it. Yep, that's Evan. He's getting married the day before graduation. So he had his students use Bootstrap and make a site for him. It was a contest. He got permission from the people at Rankin that it was a contest. Everybody in his class, the winner he gave $100 to. And he actually put it out on the regular internet. That's not under Rankin's server. That's under the regular internet. All right? And he said this year he's going to have his students redo it and see if he gets a better one than what's out there right now. Except that's all Bootstrap. That's all first-year people that he taught. And he does, he just teaches them, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks. All right. Remember when we did that project where we had to do that PSD stuff? I told him that's a crock. And I'm not saying that it's not valuable, and there are still people who make websites like that. But I said, if you're going to spend 2 weeks on something, spend it on this. Don't spend it on the PSD stuff. And I finally got it where I think he's agreeing with me. That's a major accomplishment in itself. Yes, yes. But even with Dreamweaver, when you work with PSDs, it's fairly difficult. You can be much more granular, but you're right. I just found it amazing that he's getting married on May 11th, I think it is. I think he's getting married on a Friday, and graduation's the next day. I think it's, let's see. I thought it was the 12th. May. It's the 12th. He's getting married on the 11th. I don't have any idea if he's a drinker or not, but if he is, I'm not going to be surprised if he doesn't make it to graduation. Again, that's his call. He can do whatever the heck he wants. He looks a little goofy there. I've never met her. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And he's very, very smart. He's bordering on brilliant. All right. So let's go back and let's look at our code. So again, I'm going to jump back into here. Well, one thing is, this isn't bad. But remember, if we created a menu and we had clear in a menu, right? So if we had a button that cleared and a menu option, we probably wouldn't want to write the code right in there. We'd probably want to pull those 4 lines out and write another method to do it. Okay? But we're not worried about that right now. We're not worrying with working with menus or anything else. So let's do the calculate. Well, this whole thing is going to go into an if statement that says if is, with a big I, valid. Okay? And I want you to understand what that means. What this code right here, this code, what this code means is if all of our checks worked. So in other words, none of those validators came up. So we put in a number. We put in a number for interest rate. We put in a number for number of years, and they were both valid. We only want to do that if that's the case. If it's not valid, why would we want to go and click calculate and have it calculate? There's already an error. So we're only going to do it if this stuff is valid. All right. Now, this is kind of unfortunate. In fact, let's see if do I have the code someplace? I think I do. I'm not trying to be lazy here, but it'll be much faster if we do it this way, if I can find the darn file. So I'll have to change all these. Let's drop down list. It's text box. Right. That's everything, except I've got to write that routine. Okay, give me just a second, then you can start typing if you want to type. All right, I got to jump back to the other code that I have in here and write this. Or not write, I guess just copy this. Okay, so I'll leave that up there. If you want to, if you have your book, it's also on page 67 in the book. So that's easier for you. Use it. Let's try one thing before you keep typing. Let's save it. Let's run it and see if it works now. Okay? If it comes up and I don't get any errors, that's a good start. That probably means the code I put in, or at least copied in, is okay. So I want to invest $200 a month at an interest rate of 10%, and I want to do it for 25 years. All right, so how much money will I make after that? $267,578.07. Remember, I'm doing it per month. Since it's $200 a month, that's $2,400 a year. All right, and over 10 years, you know, whatever it is. But hopefully that answer is right. Okay? They actually give you one that you can try in the book to see whether or not it's correct. So let me stop the run. And there it is. I don't think I can make this much bigger. That's about as big as I can make it, so hopefully that's big enough where you can read it. And I'll be right back. you're going to get an error message right here until you write that method. Everybody will get an error message unless you've already written the method. All right, so don't worry about that. I'll give you about 5 minutes and then I'll move it down so you can see the other one. Everybody types at a different rate. Hopefully when we get to the point where we're working with databases, you'll really discover how cool this is. You can write an entire database-based system without writing a line of code. That's pretty cool. Now, to customize it, you have to write code, but you can allow it to do inserts, updates, and deletes without writing any code. I think that's pretty darn powerful stuff. Can you start to see what I mentioned to you, that it's sort of a marriage between HTML and C#? I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's kind of the way I look at it. That's why, believe me, even if we just start to do this project for them, there's plenty of work to do. You have to have people build interfaces. So if you're not strong in coding, but you're like, I could probably build that interface, that there's work to be done there. There's going to be coding work to be done, etc. There's going to be database work to be done. Do you all understand, looking at the screen here, these lines right here, those are grabbing the values from your interface. The first one, the monthly investment, is grabbing the value of the drop-down list. The second one is grabbing the value of the interest rate text box. The third one is grabbing the text box value for the years. That's all it's doing. And then we're telling it, okay, now we want to figure out the future value, so call this function. Calculate future value and pass in monthly investment and yearly interest rate in years, which we just grabbed from right here. And then when you're done, you've got the future value. Take it, throw it into our label for the future value, and format it for currency. Okay? It's 3:56. At 4 o'clock in 4 minutes, I'm going to move it down so you can see the rest of it. Even if you're a little bit behind, I want to do that because I want people to have time to do this before the period ends. Again, I will be more than happy to take my copy and make it available to anyone who wants it. So the plan is tomorrow, when we start up here at 12:35, hopefully by 1 o'clock, I'm gonna build this, and you're gonna watch me. I don't want you to type in anything. I want you to watch. And then I'm going to give you about 3 hours that you can sit there and you can basically go through all of the material in Chapter 1 and all of the material in Chapter 2 where they show you how to build this. Okay? And I even thought, why don't I make it an assignment? But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to require that you put comments in there, because then you're explaining to me that you're understanding what's going on. Otherwise, it's just an exercise in data entry, and that's a waste of your time. But by putting comments in there, you're showing me you understand. So like in here, you would have to explain to me what these variables are. Down here, which we'll get to in just a minute, you have to explain to me what's going on there. I said, in about 2 more minutes, I'm gonna move this down. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to get in. If you haven't, take your book and turn to page 67. The code is right there. You'll have to change this. In the book, they called it DDL. I called it drop-down list. They called it TXT, and I called it text box. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. All right, looks like everybody's done typing, so I'll move this down. So here's the other one, right here in the blue. Okay? That I might be able to make a little bit bigger. No, not that much bigger, I guess. There.
Is this inside of the button still?
This is, no, the button ends right there. No, this is the routine that's being called from the routine in the button. Now, I'm going to pause the tape because I'm already over an hour, so I'm just going to